On today's podcast, we sit down with special guest Michael Frick, who's the Vice President of Brand Partnerships and Creative Sync at Position Music. It's a very interesting conversation in that we discuss how brands are using music today more than ever to reach audiences, and how music can have much more of an impact in reaching new audiences today, as well as how he establishes the relationships with the brands that he works with, and also at what point music becomes part of the concept for a brand, who are the ultimate decision makers in that world, and what specific factors determine the rates that you charge, as well as some of the new opportunities he sees on the horizon, and much, much more. This is one conversation I think you're really going to enjoy. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we're with Michael Frick, VP of Brand Partnerships and Creative Sync at Position Music, where we discuss how brands are using music today to reach audiences, who the ultimate decision makers are in his world, and the new opportunities he sees on the horizon. But first, a word from our sponsor. Hey, Insiders. Are you looking to take your music career to the next level? Then you need to know about the Music Business Registry. The Music Business Registry is the leading music industry publisher of the most up-to-date contact information for major and independent record label A&R, music publishers, artist managers, music attorneys, music supervisors, and much, much more. The Music Business Registry is the trusted industry standard and source serving the music business community for over 28 years with the most accurate and up-to-date contact information available. Their titles include the A&R Registry, the Film and Television Music Monthly, the Music Publisher Registry, and the Music Attorney Registry. All of their publications are available in print, PDF, CSV, or online subscription. Visit them now at musicregistry.com and receive a 10% discount by using coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. When you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured interview is with Michael Frick, who's the Vice President of Brand Partnerships and Creative Sync at Position Music. This was a really interesting discussion. He gets into the whole concept of brands, how they're using music much more extensively today, how he builds his relationships with the decision makers, and what kinds of possibilities are going to be existing in the brand marketing element, especially as we head into the future.
Yeah, this is our second interview with somebody at Position, which, really works in so many different areas. And he kind of talks about that too in the interview. So I'm really, really looking forward to our insiders listening to this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had talked with the founder, Tyler.
Right.
Tyler Bacon, who founded the company over 20 years ago. So this was a really, really insightful one.
So Insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with Michael Frick.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. Michael, when in your life did you know that music or the music business was going to be your professional career path?
I was 14 years old, and I had gone into a teen dance where a bunch of my friends were DJing, but they had patched together a bunch of boom boxes and had made mixtapes. And I found out how much they were earning. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good for playing music at a party. What if I did it with turntables and a mixer instead of the same boomboxes patched together? So I went home and talked to my mom and knew that they did these teen dances once a month. And she decided that she was going to co-sign a loan for me to buy music equipment. So I bought a DJ rig and a realistic mixer and bought an old PA from a band that was breaking up in my podunk town in Maryland, where there was only one other DJ named the Gorilla DJ, and he wore a gorilla suit, and I thought, hands down, I could be a lot cooler than that guy.
And that was how your career started.
And that was it.
Okay. All right, great.
Michael, you're in a very specific area of music placement, which is music and brand partnerships. What is the state of music usage today with brands?
Brands today have a lot more opportunity to put music in different places to reach people's ears, so they can actually be a lot more focused today and reaching the audience that they're trying to find versus, the days when it was just broadcast commercials where it was a big mass audience that had to hear the same song.
In your experience, is music used today more to tell stories than it was in the past?
I find that a lot of the copywriters at ad agencies like to think about the lyrics in a song in a way that would kind of take the place of what ad copy might do. And so in the sense that, a lot of ads do have wall-to-wall ad copy, and then there are those ads that are wall-to-wall music. But the lyrics tell the story of the brand in a much more poignant way than, say, a copy from a creative director or copywriter might do.
Yeah, I think of that example of that new IKEA commercial. I don't know if you've seen the one with the two big bears, and it's got that Sampa single, and it's that old Silver song that they're sampling. Great idea, because it speaks to that, where you're just hearing, just the music is playing the theme of that commercial. There's no copy, no nothing going on that. I don't know if you've seen that commercial, what I'm talking about, but it's like a family that's coming home and it's raining, so they build like this little house at night, and it's got this old sample of this old Silver song, but it's done by a new artist that's a rapper called Sampa the Great, I believe it's called. It's a really great, I don't know if you know the tune that I'm talking about, but
it's a great tune.
It's a great track that they did, and so it speaks to what you're saying on there. Michael, can you talk about the diversity of music needs that brands have today, as it's not only about sync music placement?
Diversity meaning the styles and
the different styles and genres. Yeah.
Again, with digital media today, we can target a very specific audience with the music. So, I've seen ads who may have different songs. I can speak to something in the past, which was a Lay's potato chips commercial, and there was a daytime version and a nighttime version. And the nighttime version used a Queen song. Sorry, the nighttime version used an Al Green song. The daytime version used a Queen song.
Huh.
And I was very surprised that they did that, but they had a very specific use that they were looking to have to generate a different feel from the audience that was seeing it.
Interesting. Okay, so really going for specific targets.
Yes, and that was again pre-digital. That was broadcast. Whereas now you can be very specific and think about who you're looking to reach.
To reach, exactly. How do you develop the relationships with the brands that you end up doing business with? How does that process work for you?
Wow. Well, a lot of times I think about them as the cool kids that you want to get to know and to try and establish some sort of common rapport where you do have a connection, and it probably isn't necessarily leading with music, but at times it is. And just try and figure out what the DNA of the person is representing that brand, and also having a clear understanding of what the brand stands for itself. And it's a process that takes some time. Probably a good solid 6 to 18 months, depending on how frequently those brands create campaigns. Because while we may think something is happening, overnight, these commercials take months and months and months to come together. So you may have one opportunity that is on the table and it kind of slips by, but 6 months later, that same person is developing something new. That one may go a different direction, and then the next time around, you've already established some rapport, and you've had an opportunity to put some of your best product in front of that brand or in their ears, and they recognize that you've kind of done your homework, and it's off to the races.
Yeah. So once you have the client, could you take us through the process and the anatomy, creatively and business-wise, from inception to completion of the spot, and at what stage does music start becoming a factor in that process?
Well, the starting point for music is kind of all over the place. I think for me, a lot of what I try and do is send virtual mixtapes, playlists to creative directors, so they can actually think about the music as they're concepting. Sometimes these creative directors in a room, a war room, creating concepts and campaigns and throwing things against the wall to see what works. And oftentimes they're listening to music. So if you can give them music that kind of fills, the ambiance of the room, maybe influences their their creative output at that point in time, maybe a lyric or a verse gives them an inkling of an idea that they can build around. That would probably be the earliest point when a project is happening. But music fans, people who are in the ad industry or the brand industry who are music fans, they've got an affinity for certain artists and styles. And so they may already know that they want to build something around the particular artist that they're a fan of because they want to work with them. Or as a fan, they want to support them. And then at other times, it is at the very end of the process where it's a process I call playing King of the Hill, where there's a hero song that people like, and then it's a matter of putting other options up against that till the very, very end when finally it either comes down to budget or deadline. Somebody has to make a decision and decide what song's going to ship with the spot. But it's kind of all over the place. I like to be early. Oftentimes I like to connect with directors who may be bidding on projects. They can write an artist into a treatment. They can write a song into a treatment. They can provide references. Oftentimes it's the editor that you're working with, and you can send the editors that some playlist and some music that they just become fans of, and they know that at some point it's going to work great for a car commercial. So if that editor does a lot of car commercials, they may have a folder of our music waiting for the right car commercial to come by that they're editing. So they'll use that to string out the picture and put together a rough edit. And when people see that for the first time and they can't unhear it, that's called temp love. And that's a great place to be.
No, precisely. And you touched on this somewhat in your answer, and I was wondering if you could expand on it. Who are the decision makers that give the final green light from choice of composer to song choices to be used in your world?
Well, there are thousands of agencies, and there are thousands of decision makers. I think you probably can speak to this, Ritch. There's a finite number of advertising music producers and music supervisors. Let's say maybe 75, right? 100 if we're lucky. The rest of that is really being driven by business affairs, the creative team, the director, if the director has some ideas. But really it's all over the place.
Okay, so because I'm asking because in the world of film, it's very defined. In the world of television, it's fairly defined. But in the world of brands, I understand that world of advertising and agencies and supervisors, it's much more extensive. It's a lot more money at stake. They pay a lot more, higher fees. But you could be going along, and then all of a sudden the client says, but everyone else. I mean, that can be a reality too. So that's why I was asking, who are those decision makers? I mean, they're all over the place, aren't they?
Well, again, there's always people that kind of assign themselves the music expert role. And they may not have a title, but they liken themselves to be a music expert or in the know creatively. And then there are those who say, well, this is what my kid is listening to, and I know that this is cool. The reality is that it's really hard to say a lot of times. And again, for me, I come back to we're trying to find the music fans. They're the ones that are going to push for something. They're the ones who are going to step up and say, hey, no, this thing is good. But the reality is, I have an example where years ago I was working on an Apple commercial, and Steve Jobs wasn't liking one of the songs that was in the mix because he felt that it was kind of an overexposed artist. And the agency called, and they needed something to replace this very cool, in my opinion, not necessarily overexposed artist, but it was a great challenge. And we were able to actually find a song, create a song that beat that. And, we were working with the senior creative team at Apple, and they were able to play in the entire music marketplace to try and find something. But because we were able to do something unique and fresh that still fit kind of what they were looking for, we ended up with the iPod Nano commercial to launch the iPod Nano.
Wow.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
In the world of brands and advertising, what kind of rates are you guys looking at for sync placements? I mean, I'm sure it's got to run the gamut.
Well, let's say this, again, going back to the notion that at one point it was just broadcast 1 year or 13 weeks at a time. Now that we're in the digital world, we can quote on really what the media use is for that commercial. So, a lot of brands want to be able to archive the spot in perpetuity on their YouTube, but they only want to do a paid media spend behind it for 3 months or 6 months. It may not be broadcast; it may be digital only. So, to be honest, those numbers really vary and can be flexible depending on the licensing director, on the label or the publishing side.
And on the medium, as you were saying.
And on the medium, and then also it can be success-based. So, renewals are something that happen all the time. And so if somebody wants to do a license for 3 months to see how the spot reacts in the marketplace, and then renew it for another 3 months, and keep going, they don't have to do a 1-year license out of the gate.
So you can get really granular with the types of deals and licensing that you're doing. That's great. Hey, Insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured interview. Stay tuned because we've got so much more value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor. Hey, Ritch, you're the founder, CEO, legend of Music Business Registry. Tell us what the Music Business Registry is all about.
Well, what it's about, Eric, is it's a company that is designed to provide the most accurate and up-to-date contact information for the music business. So if someone is looking to reach the A&R community, if someone is looking to reach music publishers, if someone needs to reach artist managers, if someone needs to reach music attorneys, if someone's looking to place their music into film and television and needs to reach all the music supervisors, that's the contact information that we provide. We've been doing it for 28 years. We're sort of the industry standard, if you will, for the music business, and have been serving them since 1992. So that's what we do.
Amazing. So if I wanted to find out, let's say A&R people from Warner Brothers, let's say, I can just go in there and find that in the A&R registry?
Absolutely. You'll find all of the Warner Brothers in there. You'll find the Warner Brothers in LA, Warner Brothers in New York, Warner Brothers in Nashville, Warner Brothers in London, Warner Brothers, probably in Australia as well. So those are the main territories that we cover.
Amazing. And we're offering all of our insiders right now that are listening, if you visit musicregistry.com and use coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount off your first order. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. Anything else you want to say, Ritch?
Well, when you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com. Are you finding more and more uses for these platforms? In other words, it used to be TV or radio or print or, but in your case, TV or radio. Are you finding more and more things online? I mean, are you seeing more, vistas and more new opportunities opening up?
Yeah, I mean, going back to when YouTube launched, right? And that was kind of the first medium outside of broadcast where people said, oh, and we need a YouTube license for this, right? And arguably, YouTube had the potential to reach way more eyeballs or earballs than a broadcast commercial did if it, went viral, which I don't think was probably a term in the early 2000s.
Right.
So to see the numbers for YouTube quotes, or the request being a fraction of what the broadcast was, didn't make sense. And so things have kind of balanced out now. But I do think that there are new platforms. Let's just look at, athletic and health, Peloton, Apple Fitness Plus, Nike has a workout app. UFC also has a music app, which is kind of, geared to workouts for people that are fans of UFC. And those platforms are within major brands whose music supervisors may be programming for those medium, if you will, but then can cross it over to broadcast opportunities or big commercial ads, or, it reacts because trainers like to use that particular song in a workout. Orange Theory Fitness just hired Steve Aoki to be their first music ambassador. I work out there with my daughter, and we always used to take music into our trainer because we wanted to hear that in our workouts. So, those places are great for music discovery now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me ask you something about the process in terms of your work. When you get a brief from an ad agency or from a brand for an original piece of music, that's the brief. How do you determine? What's the process that you go through to determine who you go to at Position Music to fulfill on that?
Our expertise at Position for those tends to be trailers. In the ad space, we do have a finite number of composers. I think there's a certain tenacity one needs to have, certainly in the ad world, when there are so many cooks in the kitchen making decisions.
Yeah.
I like to say that you need to be prepared to jump through flaming hoops backwards on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Otherwise, you're not fit for the job.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah,
and, creatively, too, you probably want to find people who are, right in the same lane as what the music brief may be. I know a lot of composers are chameleons in terms of, I can do this, I can do that. But I think at the end of the day, putting people on the assignment that sonically fit the brief is a better way to go than try and put somebody on it that can, I can do hip hop, I can do orchestral,
Right.
I could do pop. I think really being focused on what you put on there, who you put on there, is more helpful because you want the creative director to be able to connect with that composer or producer in a way where they feel like they're creative partners. If it's somebody who's just a chameleon and says, I can do that, I can do this, that creative may be like, oh, well, let's try this. Oh, let's try that. Let's just keep trying different things and see what sticks. Rather than to have a creative partner who really wants to lean in and say, hey, let me help you steer the music. That's what I'm good at. You focus on the ad, and we'll come to this, place of agreement together.
Michael, are there any books or films that have really resonated with you professionally speaking that you could recommend to our audience?
Books or films that could resonate with our audience. Yeah. I just picked up the new Don Letts book, which I'm not remembering the title, but
we'll have it on the show notes. So yeah, we'll definitely.
Pretty awesome book. I think Ricky Vincent did a book on funk, which I really loved. When I was in college, I was able to take my intro to music industry class, and the Donald Passman book.
Yes, all you need to know about the music business
was recommended to me. However, I was a freshman, and I happened to get into that junior level class.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite ready for it.
Oh, okay.
Because contextually, there are a lot of layers
right
in the music business.
As you've learned since then, yeah.
And, I found that once I was beyond school and I was getting my fingers dirty in the sandbox, so to speak, all of the concepts in that book made a lot more sense than just kind of read it and trying to remember what a mechanical was. And,
that's a book that you read over and over again. Like once a year, I try to go through that book and just kind of get a.
I really liked Blink. Blink was a good book. It wasn't necessarily a music book, but it was a cultural book in terms of, having worked as a music supervisor as well, and then knowing what's coming and being able to explain to your clients why something may not be in the zeitgeist yet is important to pay attention to. I think, those types of cultural books are really helpful.
What are the most important pieces of advice that you can offer bands or composers who are looking to have a successful career in composing music in advertising?
Well, I think the easiest exercise for most of them is to find commercials that they love and do their own version of music to it.
Interesting.
We've received over the years, I've seen a lot of spec commercials where people build reels and they've done a rescore for something, and it really jumps out. And if those exercises end up being better than what the original final product was, it's going to get some attention. So I think that's an easy way. I think most people looking to get into that world don't have a reel, a body of work to show people. And so I think that's probably a lot better to send to somebody than just a playlist on Disco or Spotify or wherever you might send it from. That's good, as to accompany it. But at the end of the day, show me sonically why your music works, and then also show me from a craft point of view how you work. Because I know everybody has a song where they know that lyric fits perfectly for this brand or this particular scene. The odds of that particular song finding a way to that particular ad, brand, or scene is quite slim.
Right.
But if you can show people how you can make that work in other cases or other instances on other projects, then I think that's helpful exercise.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing way to do that. I've never heard anybody say that, presenting it in that way. I think that's a great way to kind of show your chops and show how you can even make it better. Kind of like we were talking about earlier with Audio Shake with the remixes and how remixes sometimes take off even more than the original song.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
it's a way that you can, and it also calls your skills as a composer into, like, okay, you want to do this? Great. Here's the $80 million Ford commercial. Do it. Go ahead. And showing, like what you said, your level of creativity and how you would envision that and how you would execute, I think was the word you used on that. That's great.
That's advertising. Trailers and TV promos are very different. The structure and the approach to create those is a completely different nuance. And, there are different terms that exist in the trailer world, like the overplay, that doesn't really come up a lot in the ad space. Covers and remakes are very popular now. Interpolations are things that people are doing that are, maybe a bit dangerous in some cases when people don't talk about how they came to be. But if you approach it right from, understanding the rights holders involved in advance, those things can do wonders too. So I think being creative as a composer and having a unique vision and kind of sonic place in your mind where you sit is, really a strong place to be.
Michael, what advice can you offer our listeners who are wanting to pursue a career in brand partnerships, doing what you're doing? What would you recommend?
Wow. There are no real titles within the brand corporate space that say, I'm the music person. There are a couple people who may have the, music and entertainment partnership thing as a title. They're not necessarily creating the content. Some brands have in-house agencies, and they would have in-house producers. That could be a place to look. But when it comes to finding, an opportunity to find somebody that might want to endorse your tour or, give you some product placement, I really think it's just trying to find the music fans. And, with these digital platforms, the conversation is it's not necessarily how many followers you have, it's how many engaged followers you have. So if you can have a means by which you can engage with a CMO or a marketing manager at a brand and know who those people are and communicate with them, then you could lean into that relationship. But I think the brand partnership conversation really happens at about 35,000 feet. It's not just, a simple ground level opportunity. It really is 360 degrees when it comes down to being done right.
Michael, where can people best connect with you at Position?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I really don't hide out when it comes to that. I joined LinkedIn in 2006, and I tell everybody to get on there and do their homework and find out who does what. I like to showcase some of the best work that I've done. I showcase some of the music that we work with. And so that's really my best professional touch point, is to find me at Michael J. Frick on LinkedIn. That's my social handle on everything, rather than a pen name.
Michael, thank you so much for doing this. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. It was great.
Great, insightful stuff here from Michael. I mean, such a lot of good information, especially for people in our audience who are looking to get their music used in commercials, to understand the nature of brands and how, I love the way when he discussed how brands are using music more today to reach audiences and how much more impact that they can have. That's a very important point. To really, if you want to get your music used in commercials for the artists that are listening to this, you really need to understand how brands and how companies are using music to if you want to achieve that.
Yeah, one of the other important points that I thought was interesting that we've had with some other of our ad agency guests is at what point, music becomes part of the concept for the brand. I mean, this is something where, you'll have a company that comes in probably, that expression that we use, the temp love, where they come up with, they might have a song already that they're listening to and they're like, we got to have this. And then they realize it's $1 million for the song. Then they have to go back and rethink that. So I think that was a really crucial part of the puzzle, because at what point does it become very important? And I think that's something it's a very big consideration for.
Oh, I agree, Eric. And I think to further your point, the way he talks about, how he establishes the relationship with the brands, not only the brands that he works with, but at what point music becomes part of that conversation. He talked about, 6, 12, 18 months of building that, because campaigns aren't done in 20 minutes.
Right.
And that's a very, very important part of it as well, is looking at that. So, my feeling is that, when you ultimately, when you look at the decision makers in his world, the thing that makes this so incredibly, I think, valuable for our listeners is understanding the full extent to how many people are involved in the decision as to what music is used, whether it's the people who are producing the commercials, whether it's the brand, or whether it's the client themselves, as well as the role that Michael has in persuading that.
Hey Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at mubutv.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show over at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes in our space. You can also find us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Insider Video Series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight. This show would not be here if it weren't for our amazing team, which are the following: interview editors Sarah Nissenbaum and Alex Taylor, show notes and transcriptions by Jani Chang, Nicole Capodoglo, Lilia Owens, and Sarah Nissenbaum, theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast.